Hello, my name is Rowena Kingsley, and for most of my life I was the quiet one in the corner. The sister people forgot to introduce the daughter no one saved a seat for. I've served my country in silence, earned medals. No one in my family cared to ask about, and the worst wounds I carry weren't from war, they came from home. This is the story of how I was mocked at my sister's wedding, and how one salute changed everything. The envelope shimmered like a wedding bell. My hands shook like I was holding a grenade. I turned it once, twice, as if it might detonate with the wrong touch. Gold edges, perfect calligraphy, no trace of hesitation. Early November cold pressed against the window of my Colorado Springs quarters. Outside, the base slept in disciplined silence. Inside, I felt that familiar tightening in my chest, the kind that comes before a storm or a memory. I didn't have to open it to know who it was from. My family never called. They sent beautifully crafted messages when they needed witnesses or an audience. The last time a letter came from them, it ended the only future I had earned myself. I slid my finger under the flap. Maribel Kingsley and Eric Weston request the honor. Sparkle or stay home. A laugh, dry, humorless, escaped me. 20 years ago, I stood in our dining room while my mother set down her fork and said, "If you wear that uniform tomorrow, don't come back." I didn't. I packed a duffel bag, stepped into the night, and told myself I wouldn't spend the rest of my life asking for a chair at their table. 4 years ago, the Air Force almost pinned a star to my shoulder. The night before my interview, an anonymous complaint arrived at the board, words sharpened to wound, calling me unstable, unfit. The promotion vanished without a mark on record. Only later did Ardell Voss from Records send me the file. The letter had been written on my family's Wi-Fi network. Its draft name M. Kingsley Draft 2. No signature, just silence. Now Maribel wanted me present at her wedding. Not loved, just present. The kind of presence expensive photographers could frame, then crop if necessary. I placed the invitation on my desk, aligning its edges with the cold precision the military taught me. My quarters were quiet, too orderly. A half-packed duffel sat by the door. Beside my bed, an empty metal chair waited, same kind they place behind honored speakers or forgotten guests. Maybe I should have thrown the card out, burned it. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel tired of fighting. I felt tired of disappearing. General Thaddeus Crestwood, her fiancé's father, his name lingered at the bottom of the card. I'd seen it before on classified paperwork beneath after-action reports from missions no one applauded. I rose, opened the closet, and touched the fabric of my dress blues. The silver insignia was cold, familiar, honest. I hadn't worn it in public for almost a year, not since the letter. "They want me invisible," I whispered. "So I'll arrive in uniform." My reflection in the dark window stared back, older, uninvited, still standing. I folded the invitation and tucked it into the suit bag, not as acceptance, but as proof. At my desk, I opened my laptop. A one-way flight. Coastal town. Her wedding. The cursor blinked, waiting for permission. I pressed confirm. I booked a one-way ticket home without expecting a single seat to be saved for me. They didn't forget my name. They erased it carefully. Luminara Hall glowed like a postcard, white light strung across palm trees, ocean air salted and warm. Cars lined the curved driveway, dripping guests in silk and champagne laughter. I stepped out of the rental car in full dress blues medals, catching the muted glow of lanterns. Heads turned, then quickly pretended not to. Uniforms are difficult to ignore, but easy to dismiss if you've already agreed someone doesn't count. Inside, a wall of white roses framed the guest list displayed on a gilded board. I scanned the K's: Kingsley Weston, but not me. Not forgotten. Simply omitted. A young attendant in black approached, smile rehearsed. "Ma'am, table 19 is just through there." Her eyes dropped to my ribbons, then away just as fast. Table 19 sat near the champagne bar and the service doors where waitstaff slipped in and out carrying trays. I could smell citrus cleaner and overhear kitchen orders more clearly than the string quartet. My place card was handwritten, placed at the farthest chair. I sat. My uniform straightened itself as if it had been waiting for this. Maribel entered to applause. She floated in lace and light, her smile wide enough to touch every corner. Our mother followed close behind with the satisfied expression of someone whose world had aligned just right. Julian lingered at the edge, hands in pockets, refusing to meet my eyes. Eric the groom looked at me briefly, then away, as though the sight burned. Dinner passed in waves of silverware and curated laughter. I ate little. Bridesmaids toasted memories from childhood I was not included in. My absence in their stories was as intentional as the floral centerpieces. Then Maribel stood tapping her glass. Before we dance, she said, "I want to thank my sister for being here tonight." Her voice dripped honey-edged with ice. Rowena writes GPS notes for a living, or satellites, or something with buttons. I never understand it. Laughter bloomed across the tables. Some covered their mouths. Most didn't bother. I didn't look down. I didn't smile. My hand curled once around the stem of my glass, then released. The string quartet kept playing, unaware it was now the soundtrack to a humiliation rehearsed without my consent. I raised the champagne to my lips, not to drink, but to keep from speaking. Maribel's eyes flicked to mine, searching for a crack. I offered none. Silence held me like armor. A whisper from a nearby table drifted over the linens. "Why did she even come?" Another replied too loud. "Maybe to remind us what failure looks like in uniform." I set my glass down. I did not stand. I did not flinch. But my silence was not surrender. It was the inhale before impact. Across the room, a chair scraped faintly against the floor. Soft, deliberate. My gaze shifted. That was the moment the air changed. But none of them noticed except him. When the microphone slipped from her fingers, it wasn't the sound that silenced the room. It was the salute. Maribel stood beneath a chandelier dripping in crystals, radiant and untouchable. The ballroom lights cast her in candlelit gold, her smile sharpened to a weapon. Guests leaned forward as if waiting for their cue to laugh again. Not a soul imagined the air could shift a second time, only harder, sharper. She lifted her glass. "Before we dance," she said sweetly, "let's raise a toast to my sister. She came from space or Wi-Fi or something with signals. I never really understood what she does. Maybe she just types coordinates." Laughter spilled like champagne. Some guests doubled over. Others watched me, hungry for any crack. I stayed seated. I didn't touch my drink. Then it happened. A chair scraped. Not loud, but deliberate, the kind of sound that doesn't ask for attention, only takes it. General Thaddeus Crestwood, 4-star officer Groom's father, rose from his seat. His movements were unhurried, precise, military. Conversations died mid-sentence. The string quartet faltered and stopped. He turned not to his son, not to the bride, but to me. He squared his shoulders. His right hand lifted, fingers pressed to his brow. A salute. Not casual. Not polite. A full, formal salute given only to someone whose service outranks silence. "Ma'am," he said, voice steady as steel, carrying through every corner of the hall, "the honor is ours having you here tonight." Silence cracked like ice. No one moved. No one breathed. 2 naval officers at table 6 rose instinctively, saluting before their minds caught up. A Marine major placed his hand over his heart. Then another. And another. Even the DJ behind the sound booth stood uncertain but compelled. Maribel's smile twitched. Confusion crawled across her face like a stain. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. My mother's hand flew to her pearls. My brother Julian stood halfway, then stopped, torn between loyalty and shame. Eric stared at his father as though seeing him for the first time. I remained seated. my spine straight, palms resting lightly on my lap. The uniform did the speaking. The weight of 100 eyes shifted not to her gown, nor her perfect floral arch, but to the woman at table 19, next to the restrooms and champagne bar. Me. General Crestwood held the salute a moment longer, then lowered his hand with the finality of a gavel. Maribel's fingers slipped. The microphone hit the floor with a hollow crack. Gasps rippled like wind across wheat. Eric moved to steady her, but she jerked away, eyes bright with disbelief. This was not part of her script. This was not a spotlight she knew how to stand in. No one applauded. No one dared. The only sound was the ocean outside pushing against the glass walls of Luminara Hall, as if the tide itself paused to witness. I did not bow my head. I did not smile. I only met General Crestwood's gaze and nodded once. An acknowledgement, nothing more. A soldier's acceptance. Somewhere in the back, a whispered "sir" broke the quiet, but no answer came. For the first time in years, they weren't looking at her. They were looking at me. 3 days after the wedding, I met my sister again. Not at the altar, but at gate 45, holding the letter that destroyed my life. Reagan woke in a dull gray, the terminal humming with rolling suitcases and tired announcements. Maribel stood apart in a college sweatshirt, no veil, no armor, a single page folded to a knife edge. She didn't hug me. She didn't look away. She held the paper out like a confession. It was the same anonymous complaint that halted my board, same cadence, same careful malice. But this copy wore evidence. In pen, a ring around the properties, the home Wi-Fi, the timestamp, the draft name burned into the file like gilt. M. Kingsley Fash Draft 2, ta PDF. Her voice came thin. They wanted you gone. I wanted to be the one they kept. A boarding call broke overhead. I kept my eyes on the page. You could have told me. I counted on your silence, she said, and flinched at the truth in it. She neither begged nor defended. When the line began to move, she stepped backward, not pardoned, not punished, simply empty-handed. I folded the letter and left. 2 nights later, I met Eric at a small officers' bar near Fort Belvoir. He arrived late, stripped of wedding sheen, palms damp around a club soda. I suspected, he said. I asked once. She lied fast. I let it stand because the lie kept the room quiet. I picked comfort over truth. I won't make that mistake again. Late isn't never, I said. The jukebox murmured something about leaving. It felt wary rather than romantic. He nodded like a man receiving a sentence he understood. Winter Pentagon. A windowless briefing room, a screen, rows of shoulders squared by habit. I wore my blues without decoration and placed a slim folder on the lectern, SIERRA. This, I began, is a system for service members undermined from within by spouses, family, or informal power. It triages mental health routes, legal counsel, and establishes an internal review path so reputations aren't wrecked by rumor that looks like policy. A general leaned back, unimpressed. This is the military, not a therapy clinic. Before I answered, General Thaddeus Crestwood spoke without theater, sir. If we can't protect our own from injustice, we have no honor left to defend. Silence tightened and held. I advanced slides, data points glowing across bases, separations citing domestic stressors, transfers that followed anonymous claims, a pattern of quiet bleeding. Sierra wasn't a cudgel, I said, but a filter, evidence-first, limited disclosure. No punitive teeth, only light. Command would keep authority. We would keep the record clean enough to see. It would log patterns, timestamp rumors, and separate grievance from sabotage. It would give commanders cover to do the right thing before headlines did it for them. Not mercy. Structure. A place for truth to land. A ledger against amnesia when the room preferred comfort. Questions came blunt and brief. What about weaponized reports guardrails cost? I answered in the language of checklists and chain of custody. Ardell's memo existed off the books, but its lesson did not. The machine will do whatever you feed it. feed it sunlight. When the vote came, it was conditional 3-base pilot, 6 months independent audit. Conditions had once ended me. Today, they felt like hinges. Outside the corridor smelled of coffee and old carpet. Crestwood matched my pace eyes forward. "You didn't ask for pity," he said. "I asked for light." He nodded, and that was the whole ceremony. Just enough. Downstairs, the courtyard filled with the low thunder of formation. Boots struck stone in measured certainty. I stood by the glass and watched a line hold close pivot, one body with many hearts. No one looked up. No one needed to. They didn't clap this time. They stood. All my life, I sat where I was placed, at the edge of tables at the back of rooms outside the family frame. Today, I pull out my own chair. The medal ceremony isn't grand. No cameras, no polished speeches. Just a simple stage inside the Fort Myers Military Auditorium, rows of uniforms, and an empty chair beside mine. Not forgotten, chosen. General Crestwood stands before me, silver hair, steady hands. He doesn't pin the ribbon right away. Instead, he rests a hand on the back of the empty seat. "This chair is not empty because we forgot you," he says quietly. "It is empty because you stood when no one else did." For a moment, no one breathes. Then applause. Slow quiet building like a heartbeat. And from the second row, my mother. Elaine rises, hands trembling, tears she doesn't hide this time. She doesn't clap for the medal. She claps for me. Julian. My brother doesn't speak. He only lifts his hand in a silent salute. Maribel isn't here. Her absence explains itself. When the medal is finally pinned, I look at the chair. Once I waited for someone to offer me a seat. Now I know I can choose my own. Weeks later, I live in a small white house on the Amalfi Coast, carved into the cliffs, where the sea breathes in blue and exhales silver. My studio is nothing more than a wooden table, paint-stained windows, and a canvas I keep returning to. A woman walking away from a ballroom, not broken, not triumphant, simply free. A knock. Enzo Marino, the baker's 10-year-old son, barefoot, sea salt in his hair. He squints at the canvas. "Is that you?" he asks. I smile. That's the woman I refuse to stop becoming. He accepts that answer and runs off with a lemon cake his mother sent. The sea keeps breathing. For once, I breathe with it. One afternoon, the phone rings. A Washington number. I already know. Colonel Kingsley. The voice says, formal but hopeful, "The Pentagon wishes to appoint you as head of the Council for Integrity and Military Leadership. Your initiative, Sierra, needs a leader." I look out at the horizon where light meets water and doesn't ask permission to exist. "I'm honored," I reply, "but no. I've bled enough for tables I wasn't allowed to sit at." A pause. "Then what will you do?" "Live," I say, simply. "And make sure no one else is erased the way I was." The line goes quiet, not offended understanding. The next morning, I return to the canvas. I paint an empty chair by the sea, and beside it my uniform cap. I don't need to wear it to remember who I am. If another woman finds herself at the last table with no name card and no welcome, tell her I saved her a seat. Not at their table, at mine. I didn't tell my story to be pitied, but to be heard. If my journey touched you, if you've ever been pushed to the edge of a room or erased from your own family, then stand with me. Leave your words below. Tell me what you would have done, or what you wish you could have said when no one saved a seat for you. And remember this: never let anyone convince you that silence is the same as peace. Speak when it matters. Walk away when it's time. And if they refuse to make space for you, build your own table.